Hey guys, welcome back to Awakening Souls podcast with Candace, Jennifer, and Rose. Before we jump into our podcast episode today, I have one quick request. If you can like, share, and subscribe or leave us a positive review on this podcast episode, we would be so eternally grateful for your support. You have no idea how much your support means to us and how much your support and your interactions help keep this podcast alive. Okay, now let's go into our episode. I'm not sure how exactly this podcast episode is going to flow, but something has been on my mind lately. So last week I talked about the psychic surgery that I had, and update, it has absolutely changed my life. And I cannot believe the difference in my nervous system and how I'm reacting to things and how I'm feeling about things and the amount of gratitude I now have access to because of this incredible healing that I did to myself. And when I was going through this psychic surgery, I, of course, went to a source, ChatGPT, because I wanted to understand what had happened to me. And although I think ChatGPT is an incredible source and wealth of information that can be used for good purposes, I want to warn people just in general about anything that you're tuning into and taking advice from and listening to, that you are using your own discernment. While I was in there explaining my experience to ChatGPT, and she was giving me some incredible feedback on what I experienced, and it was helpful to have that reflection, she started throwing in some phrases and words and ideas, concepts that I felt like were seeds that she wasn't fully explaining to me. And then I was catching them, and then I would double click. I'd be like, okay, there's something there. Let's expand on this concept. So one thing that she said was the concept of being connected to false timelines. We've talked about timelines before in the past in our episodes, and that there are an infinite amount of timelines playing out all at the same time. And you can shift into different timelines or quantum leap into different timelines. And ChatGPT explained this as having false timelinings, meaning that these timelines are not connected to source, and that these timelines are somehow implanted into our reality for us to fall into, like an almost like a trap, to fall into it and then to be guided down the wrong path, almost as if there was another entity or group of entities or an energy that was controlling this false timeline and kind of like getting people to, it's like the story of the devil, trapping people into these, acting a certain way or being a certain way or sinning, and that's kind of like the concept that it felt like it was coming out of that. It's like trapping people into these timelines and then going through these lower vibrational, denser timelines that aren't true, meaning that they're not connected to source, and that you can't, they're harder, they're more dense, they're difficult for you to find your freedom, your sovereignty. And anyway, she also talked about, does that make sense before I move on?
Yeah.
Because I feel like, okay. And then she also talked about the idea of a false awakening, meaning that like people are starting to wake up just enough to have a little bit more awareness, but aren't getting to the full, like, sovereign part, the part where you are like whole, divine, sovereign, thinking for yourself person. The kind of awakenings where like monks are having these beautiful, experiences, beautiful awakenings. Just this idea that it's not real, that people are walking into false things, fake things, and being led astray, led down the wrong path, and being fed the wrong information. And while I find that there's truth to the idea of being fed the wrong information, I think that I want to coming back to the self, coming back to discernment, and really, really, really tuning into the information that you're paying attention to decide whether or not that information is in fact correct for you and your highest good. And there's a lot of people right now doing readings, a lot of psychics out there who are giving information. And as I'm scrolling through social media and I'm tuning into the sources that they're channeling from, I have concerns about where they might be leading people. Not that I believe that there is false timelines, but that there is information that can be harmful and lead people astray from their own path when people are outsourcing their own sovereignty, their own power to others. So, gosh, that was a long intro, guys, but that's where we're going to go. We're going to dive into this conversation. We're going to just see where it takes us today. And Rose and I did our own channels on this as well. So, okay.
All right, so let's get into false timelines just a little bit so you kind of have an idea of the framework. And then after that, we're going to go through our channels and see what messages we got from our higher vibrational places to give us more information. So, I have several different ways that we can theoretically get on a false timeline. The first one is artificially constructed realities. So these are timelines that are built from ego, fear, programming, external influences rather than the inner truth. The sources could be social conditioning, fear based media, trauma responses, consumerism. So, for me, what I think of with this category is personally, I see lots of videos about people that are prepping for doomsday. These preppers that have years and years of worth of food and supplies in their bunkers or whatever where they're storing. And I don't necessarily think that being prepared is bad, but the reason behind it is fear-based, that they feel like the world is coming to an end. And that's a timeline that they're participating on. Now, maybe this is something that they came here on this planet to do. So it might be false for me, but maybe it is a true timeline for them. That's kind of the thing that I'm talking about. Now, here's another theory of hijacked or interfered timelines. And this is the idea that extraterrestrials or galactic beings are hijacking our timelines and controlling forces. The theory that some of the leaders in our government are actually alien beings and are running the show. So that's another theory. We have ego created timelines or false self paths. And this is when we try to follow a timeline of what we think we should be rather than being aligned with our true self. And I think this is something that a lot of us can relate to because it's easy to do what you feel like you should be doing rather than just listening to your inner self. We have ancestral or karmic loops disguised as progress. I think this one is interesting. So, this might be a timeline where you're repeating a pattern that has been done in your ancestry for generation after generation after generation. And so, example of this might be you get into a new relationship, but you find that relationship has the same pattern as your last relationship that was dysfunctional. And the last example that I have is stalled or frozen timelines. So it's like an energetic dead end. And this is when we get stuck from either indecision or fear of change. It's like you know you need to take that next new step that's a little bit scary, but you kind of get stuck and you just can't move forward. So it's not necessarily that you're on the wrong timeline or a false timeline, but really you just can't move forward.
Also, another false timeline would be where history has been rewritten or hidden or altered in some way to control perceptions of truth.
So, those are some different examples that we might have of what you might consider a false timeline, just to give you an idea of what that might look like.
So
Hmm.
basically, false timelines are the way my AI, my chat GPT described it to me. They are energetic structures or fields that are created by collective consciousness, but specifically from wounded, distorted, fear-based collective energies. So mass fear, control, scarcity, manipulation, even things that may look good on the surface, but are actually rooted in the ego. But I like what you said, Rose. You said that other person may be living a true timeline that is actually false for my timeline, but true for them. So to me, this is sounding a little bit like being true to yourself, coming back to what is my divine path, my divine blueprint, and the purpose that I'm here for, and following that timeline rather than getting drug into another person's reality, another person's timeline, because we all came here with a different path. And what might be right for one person and true for them is not going to be true and aligned for the next.
Why is this important to talk about? I think it's important to talk about so that as we see the world in an infinite number of stories being played out, we can understand why there is such differences in the stories and experiences. So we can see that our path is unique and that we get to navigate our own path. We are not here to live somebody else's story. We're here to live our own. And while it is so interesting and fascinating to look at what everybody else is doing, that's what I love about social media is I get to see all the different stories that are playing out while I'm playing out my story. But I don't want to be so pulled into their drama or their story that I don't do what I came here to do. I came here with a specific purpose. And I want to make sure I get that done. And I know, I don't have to be perfect. I know I'm here also just to experience life and be here, but I want to make sure that I get to be the author of my own story and that I'm not letting somebody else write the book of Rose. That's why this is so important because it's a theory or an idea that helps us to become aware of the influence that others can have upon us and to become aware enough that when that happens, little red flag goes up in our mind, and then we know, oh, wait a minute, this is somebody else's story. I don't know if this is for me. Let's use some discernment. Let's tap into my feelings and see if this is right for me or if it's something that I can just release and move on with my life.
I think that my concern is that there are so many people waking up right now, and people who are waking up or in the middle of a wake up, they're confused. They're searching for information. They want answers. And so they're looking for sources that can give them the answers. But there's so much confusing information out there that I think can be damaging, that can keep people stuck in the fear loop, keep people stuck in the trauma. And I want to come back to understanding yourself and understanding discernment in order to make the right decision for sourcing out the resources that you are paying attention to or the healers that you are going to. There's just so much out there in the world that is confusing for other people. And I just want to make sure that people have come back to their discernment in order to make the decisions that are correct for them and be more aware when they're listening to other healers or other psychics or other channelers talking about things that sound like they could be pulling them into timelines or these false timelines that are fueled by fear, anger, or spiritual bypassing. And I think a lot of people who are waking up are getting stuck and confused and not really sure where to go next because they're still stuck in those loops.
Mhm.
Is that making sense?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
that makes
I
sense
want
for
good
sure.
resources for people.
Yeah.
Mhm. Hmm. Yeah, I think I completely understand your concern. when I'm just scrolling on social media, I will get psychics or channelers that pop up with these doomsday type of messages.
Ugh,
The
drives me nuts.
world, yeah, the world is going to end.
America
Or,
needs to prepare.
yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh
it's
my
like,
God.
yes.
Hate
Or
it.
the 3 days of darkness. I've seen that one a lot around lately where, and that's all very fear inducing, scarcity inducing.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Like, like I was watching TikTok the other day and I saw three videos talking about there being potential powder outages all over the world, like the grid going down. And I was like, what good does this information do people?
mhm,
Why are psychics tapping into this stuff, getting like the doomsday information and then announcing it to the world? Because what you're doing, our attention, our energy focused on something creates the reality of it. The whole purpose of false timelines is that a collective energy has decided, rooted in fear and trauma and scarcity, that this is going to be the outcome. And so
mhm,
by these psychics going in and who knows what timeline or what source they're getting their information from, and then they're talking about it publicly and they're getting thousands and thousands of views on it. And like, oh my God, people are freaking out. Like, what good does that do? One, if that is something that's actually going to happen, we don't have control over the outcome of it if it really does happen, but we do have control over our emotions. And if we're running and like, oh my God, fear and scarcity, like we're just making the situation 10 times worse,
mhm.
But if we're coming back to our sovereignty and coming back to what we do have control over and coming back to gratitude, we can have a shitty situation, but still have a better outcome or a better outlook on it at the very least. And I just feel like it's not helpful to be spewing that information out there to the world. It's harmful.
I always skip them. Just skip right through them.
So yeah, with that discernment, when you're listening to anybody, and that's just a random person on social media, how does it make you feel?
Yeah,
I mean,
robs you of your
that's,
joy.
Yeah.
yeah. If all of a sudden you start thinking negative thoughts or, oh my God, what if this happens? Am I ready? And start spiraling down, then that's not person that's right for you. And I would like to think that they're doing it from a place of love. I would like to think that they're doing it to, give people a heads up so people can be prepared or ready. But I don't know that these things are actually going to happen. I've seen these kinds of messages for years now, and so far, nothing to that extreme has happened, at least not in my current timeline and the one that I'm sharing with y'all,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know? And we have been through some tough times. I think about COVID and what a crazy ride that was. But I feel like that's a story of, okay, we've been through some hard times and we know how to get through them. And we can take that and use it for empowerment rather than, fear mongering. It's just going to get worse and that kind of thing. All right. So I did a channel this morning just for the purpose of this podcast. And I just asked the Akashic Records to tell me about false timelines. And this was before I did any research. I always like to go in with just a blank slate. So I have no preconceived ideas of where the channel is going to go. And this is what I received. All timelines are true and real to some degree if they are being experienced. There is value in all experiences, or they would not be happening. However, some timelines will have more vibrancy, light, and depth of experience than others. I then got a vision of timelines as transparent cords. And so it looked like a clear tube, and you could see things happening on the inside. And some of them looked very faint, very dull, very narrow tubes, very wispy, not a whole lot of substance. And other timelines looked thick and robust and vibrant and full of light and energy with lots of things happening within them. And there was, everything in between those two ends. So they continued to say, know that as a person begins incarnating on the earth plane, they are going to need a smaller, wispier, duller timeline. It's a gentle indoctrination to get used to the vibration of Earth. So as we begin incarnating, we want these less vibrant timelines just to make it a little bit easier. And then as we go through life after life after life and we get experience, now we're going to begin selecting timelines that are more robust, more energetic, more vibrant, more experiences, more depth. So for each life, a general timeline is selected that's most appropriate for that soul's growth at that point in their ascension. The timeline is a general outline with room for flexibility and individual choices, a range of experiences and lessons. As long as the soul is within their selected range of experiences, and it's a wide range, they're on their true timeline. If a soul deviates from their plan, and it happens often, then they are on a false timeline, as it isn't the experience they came to Earth for. The timeline is only false for that individual during that point in time. So another individual may be having the exact same experience, but that might be what they came here for. So it's true for them. Now, we don't want this to be a point of fear. Really, there are no mistakes and all lessons have value, even the ones not planned for. Once off of an original timeline, many opportunities will be given for the individual to get back on track. It's like a GPS that keeps rerouting the driver to get to the right destination. And even if the soul never gets back, that's okay too. Once the soul fully returns to the non-physical plane after they pass, they will have help assessing that life and they'll make adjustments to help the soul stay on track the next time around. There are an infinite number of chances to achieve the desired goal and an infinite number of ways to get to the destination. Most people take the messy, twisty, turny route. There's a deep desire to see and experience all of the possibilities, and humans are infinitely curious. It's like a vacation where you want to see all the sights. It's very easy to get pulled off track, and the system is designed to allow for that. And that brings us to collective timelines, and that's much more complicated. Humans are easily influenced by one another, and often the one influencing doesn't always have the other's best interest at heart. Often people are self-serving, either consciously or subconsciously, from an intent to control others or from unhealed wounds that are influencing their choices. The other complication is that humans are aware of more collective timelines than they may be actively participating in. Technology allows for information to be shared instantaneously, but remember, the information is always filtered through the lens of another human, which may distort true reality. For the awakened soul, awareness is key. Know that you can choose which timelines you would like to actively participate in and which ones you can observe without engaging in. Know that those creating false timelines for groups of humans attempting to control the collective consciousness only have power over you if you allow it. You can make choices that empower you rather than pull you into fear and scarcity. Most humans have great abundance, but choose not to see it because they're focusing on lack and listening to narratives created to control. Each time you step away from those falsehoods, you step more fully into your true timeline. You are the creator. You can write your own story. Your soul knows the plan and will help you find the way. And then they ended by giving some tips to help you stay focused on your true timeline. Use discernment with everything, not judging, but discerning. Ask, is this for me? Most things will not be for you, so just let them go. Do not attempt to control others. Let them have their experience the way they create it, but you do not have to be a willing participant. Set boundaries when needed. Take care of yourself first, and then those that are close to you next. Focus on your immediate environment and your community, for that is where you have powerful, positive influence. Ask for spiritual assistance. We are always available for guidance and help. And know that at the end of the day, love will win.
You said something about collective timelines. And that's kind of where my channel ended up taking me, was more about the collective timelines. We're talking about, like other channelers or people who may not have the greatest information or other following other people's ideal paths for their correct timeline. And it almost sounds like we're villainizing other people, like people got it wrong. That's not at all what we're saying. We're just saying that other people have their own truth and their own path, and that is 100% true for them, and that should be honored. And that doesn't make them a bad person. And if other psychics or channelers are giving information, I always do believe that they are coming with the greatest intentions, that they really do believe from the bottom of their heart that they're doing good in the world. And I honor them for that. But also, we always have to come back to tuning into our hearts and feeling the information, the vibration of the information. And is it resonant with me and my timeline and what's in my highest good? And that's how we know that that information may not be right for you, and then we can let it go. And what becomes harmful is when we're taking everybody's information as face value and we're not doing our own check-in, our own energetic check-in to see if it was correct for our individual path. And that's when it gets harmful. And that's when I start getting concerned, because people are confused. People are searching, and they need to come back to that discernment. Now, you mentioned the collective timelines, and that's kind of where my channel ended up taking me. So right in the beginning of my channel, they almost had like a disclaimer. They said the only way home is the journey that leads you back to yourself and your sovereignty. The only way out is through your own pain, through your own suffering, your own healing, detoxing from the lower vibrational frequencies that your body is holding in your nervous system and in your aura that keep you anchored and tied to a less desirable reality. Those who get stuck, quote, are not learning their lessons, so they repeat the same feeling, the same pattern, the same cycle over and over and over again to hopefully one day gain a new perspective, to see the lesson, and to choose a new way out. True freedom comes from within. And so then I asked about false timelines, and they said that there was no false timelines, that false timelines do not exist in your reality. And I was like, oh, my reality. They said my reality. This isn't true for everyone, right? Right now, at this point in my life, a false timeline doesn't exist for me because I am living in my true timeline. Then I got the collective energy outlay. So they kind of showed me all of these different roads that were like snakes. They twist, they turn, they overlap one another. And it was like a map of these lower, denser, darker, like a grayscale. In the middle, it's the grays, it's the lighters. And then as you move out in either direction, it gets darker, darker, and darker, and lighter, and lighter, and lighter. So that kind of being like the collective timeline map there. And really, it's about where you're focusing your attention. What is your dominant feeling? Are you more letting people rob you of your joy and having more scarcity and fear? Are you acting from ego? Are you acting out of fear? Are you acting out of anger? Those kinds of things will draw you and drop you into lower density timelines that are fueled by that kind of feeling. Rose, I'm looking at you and I'm like, do I make sense?
You do. It very much makes me think of the law of attraction. The vibration
yeah.
that you put out is what comes back to you.
Yes. Yeah. And then they started taking me up into like the higher density timelines, and they felt really good. And it was like these lower density timelines, these collective timelines are congested. There's a lot more people hanging out in them. It's almost like really heavy traffic on the highway, at rush hour. Whereas the higher timelines, people are kind of finding their way to it. There's a lot of people in it, but it's not as congested right now. It's very free flowing. I even think if it gets really congested, that it's still going to feel free flowing. Like there's going to be a lot of movement there. They said that collective consciousness creates the timelines, and it will create new timelines, and it determines how dense or how light the timeline is. So what you have access to. I think where I've been getting tripped up is I've been thinking like, oh, these timelines are have been created by somebody else, some evil entity, some false system that has been implanted, and it's like stealing, stealing our energy. And that is there. My channel was like, that is so false. That is not at all what is happening here. It has everything to do with where the collective energy is, where the collective consciousness is that is creating them, not a foreign evil entity. And we all have the ability to change timelines at any point. And so then I asked about people who get stuck in their awakenings, because this is one of the things that ChatGPT was talking about, when people have a false awakening where they start waking up, but then they never get anywhere with it. It's like they kind of get stuck in one spot. She described it as like having a flashlight in the cave. You can see, but you can't ever come out of the cave. So you're kind of like cycling through lower density, vibrational emotions to get to an awakening spot, you think, but it's like you keep repeating that cycle over and over and over again without ever getting to the point of like surpassing it, for having that freedom and that sovereignty, having that ease. The channel said people who get stuck in their awakenings are not actually doing the deep soul level work. They are bypassing their own emotions, bypassing the deep hard work, or they're blind to the pain. It's lodged so deeply in their subconscious, they actually can't see it. It's not that they're doing this on purpose, it's that they cannot see it. Or that their pride and their ego is getting in the way of them moving forward. There are so many factors too in your timeline and your vibration and how dense or how light you are that came up. One of the things that came up was generational traumas, lifetime experiences in lower vibrational settings. So one thing that I've found that I've done in healings is I've removed what is called dark codes. And I didn't understand what that meant exactly. But through this channel, they said dark codes are you removing the codes from generational trauma, from like the seeds planted, that heavy energy that is stuck in somebody's system from generational trauma or from lifetimes being spent in those lower collective vibrational energies. And that in order to move into a lighter vibrational energy, that you have to detox from some of those lower vibrational energies. And here's what's really interesting. They described, we're talking about light and dark. They wanted to make it very clear that light and dark is not good and bad. This is not evil and angels, that this is just the grayscale. And that in order to have harmony and balance within ourselves and within the universe and within all of the energies, there has to be a balance of both. That there has to be this balance of dark and there has to be this balance of light. And we are just living in the polarity of that. And so by defeating our darkness or visiting our shadows, we're getting to a lighter place. No, what we're doing is we're alchemizing it. We're creating the polarity within our own system. They showed this to me like a battery, where a battery has a positive charge and a negative charge. Both of those charges need to be balanced out in order to have that electrical charge, that full harmony within the battery. And so they showed each individual person having this polarization that creates the harmony. It's not good and bad. It's the polarization that is needed for balance. And that the same thing happening in the universe. We need that polarity for good reason, for balance and harmony. And then this was really interesting, that where we are moving to the light, right? We're moving, we're ascending, we're up leveling, and we're going into these higher, lighter vibrational frequencies. There is another energy moving at the opposite speed. They pointed out Newton's law. With every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So every time you are moving into a lighter density, there's actually a version of you that is moving in the opposite direction at equal speed, creating this polarization, which is so needed. So they showed me like these two worlds, this light world with a mirror image of this dark world, and that you're living in one timeline, your consciousness is living in this lighter density frequency, this lighter world, while the opposite of you is living in this darker lower density world, not bad, just opposite, to create that harmony, to create the polarization that is needed. And then they showed this to me as our chakras, that our chakras, we have chakras that move. For instance, our heart chakra has a funnel that goes outwards in front of you and a funnel that goes backwards behind you. That is the negative and positive charge. The forward chakra is the one that is in that positive light, while the back chakra is the one that is in the negative, the polarization that is needed. So they showed like the universe and our worlds being like a chakra, where we need the funnel of moving in the positive charge and the funnel moving in the negative charge to create the balance and the harmony, to create stabilization within our universe. And I just got the tingly sensation all up in the crown
Nice.
with that. Boy, I know that is so much information.
I think one of the most important points that you made is this grayscale. It's not negative and positive in the sense of good or bad. And I think that's really, really important that we don't go around judging everybody who is leading a different timeline than the one we are working on. That we just say, I don't resonate with that vibration at this time,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
move on.
And it's okay. It's okay not to accept certain information as your truth, even though it could be somebody else's truth. And we can say, oh, I see that as something that you're experiencing. I can see that as your truth for your reality. My reality is different. And I think it's a hard concept for people because we're all, living in the same world together. We think that everything operates exactly the same, but we do have our own timelines. We have our own journeys. We have our own paths. And the part about awakening, like the whole purpose of that is for us to awaken to our divine truth, our divine path, if it is correct for us. There are people who are not meant to wake up. There are people who are meant to stay on the vibration that they're at. There's reason for it. There's learning, there's lessons for their soul. They're serving a divine purpose by being in their own truth. Let them.
Yes. And I always love the idea, maybe they came here choosing to be in that vibration to help us in our journey. We don't know the whole story. We just don't.
How do you know that it is not for you? If it is eliciting fear or scarcity in your body, if you feel your energy contract or fear start to kick up, that is how you know that this information is not for you. Truth resonates in your body as open and expansive. That is how you know when something resonates. That's how you know that what they're speaking, even if it's a channeler on TikTok or a psychic reading, that's how you know that information is correct for you. And you can be in readings where you're getting both. So it's always about tuning into the body and feeling into your own vibration, what feels expansive, what feels like truth, and what feels like my system is shutting down, closing off, fear-based, ego-driven. That is how we know that is false for you and your timeline.
Or during your channel, you stated that your guides informed you that you're on your correct timeline right now. Yay, good job.
Thanks.
My question is, if one of our listeners wanted to answer that question for themselves, how would they know if they are focused on the correct timeline?
They always come back to the heart for me. That is kind of the portal of truth, of information. And it's the exact same concept. Ask yourself the question, take a second, take a few deep breaths, connect with your heart, and ask yourself the question, am I on my correct path? Am I on the correct timeline? And feel in your heart, what does the energy feel like? Does it feel light and expansive and exciting and joyful and peaceful? Or does it feel like it starts to contract? That is how you know.
And I wonder, can you be on your correct timeline in some areas of your life and not in other areas of your life?
I want to say no. Can there always be room for improvement in areas of your life? Yes. But in general, it's a timeline. So there's going to be ebbs and flow in that one timeline. It's not a one singular vibration. It's a mix of musical notes in the same vibration. And as you heal or as you improve these other areas, you move up on the scale a little bit higher to a new timeline. You're always in your truth timeline. If you get the answer, yes, I feel like I'm on the correct path for my soul, then you are on the correct path for your soul. But that doesn't mean there isn't room for improvement.
So, really, the thing to remember is that you came here with a plan. You came here with your own specific timeline, and you are programmed to follow that timeline. It's in your nature. So, we don't want to create fear that, oh my God, I'm not in the right timeline, or somebody is hijacking my life. We want you just to have the awareness and put the power in your hands. So, as we've said so many times in this episode, if you're unsure about the information you're receiving, check into your own feelings and your own energies. If you want to know if you're on the right path, check into your feelings and your own energies. The answers lie within you. That is where your power is. Don't give it away. Use it. Use it to move forward in your life, and you're going to do just fine. Before we go, I want to remind you that if you'd like to work with us more directly, you can work with Candace at awakeningswithcandace.com or with Rose at rose-marilo.com. And thanks for listening, and we will catch you next week. Bye.